Dear applicant name, Inhuman Resources here. We'd like to thank you for applying to Cybercorp. My automated resume scanning technology has informed me that your qualifications in VAR Attribute X are impressive. However, our proprietary facial recognition algorithm detected hesitancy and frustration during the 7th mandatory one-way video interview question. Although we will be pursuing other candidates at this time, we encourage you to apply for other openings in the future.
We have to talk about the job market, but not just the job market in terms of unemployment rate or stagnating wage statistics. The real story here is about the process, the state of the literal marketplace the job seekers are navigating right now. That's what has become nearly unrecognizable since the aftermath of COVID, tariffs, and rise of AI. It's not so much that the results of a job search with no end in sight are much different from other major recessions, but that the process itself has become so much more grueling and senselessly complicated. It's tougher, shadier, lonelier, more dishonest. It's inhuman. If you're struggling right now, you know what that means, and this video is for you. So, applying for jobs. When we talk about connections and transferring information at this scale, we're obviously talking about the internet, and it's one with not a whole lot of key players. The world's largest tech platforms are no longer forward-thinking and community-oriented spaces to hang out in your free time. They're the infrastructure of civilization. Nearly every part of the economy and interpersonal communication is facilitated through the internet, and finding a job is no exception. You can walk into a fast food joint with a now hiring sign physically hanging on the door, and they'll send you right back out with instructions to apply online. So the rise of online job boards only makes sense. It's every we're hiring sign in town right there on a screen. These sites are objectively meeting a real need and providing a real service. They do justify themselves in that way. So what's the problem? What am I getting at? I referred to them earlier as infrastructure because they're a specific kind of publicly mandatory. For the average person, a job search isn't going to start and end with cold calling their dad's old college roommate who runs a marketing firm. Or was it a real estate agency? No, we're much more likely wading through the cesspit because there just isn't any other alternative. Companies and recruiters have so thoroughly ingrained the major job boards into the hiring process that we take it for granted as a non-negotiable. Still, it doesn't really matter how much these sites move beyond a conventional monopoly and become public infrastructure. When they're still for-profit, privately owned businesses, they're going to act the part. That model demands operating within the attention economy. They want to collect your data, put your eyeballs on their advertisements, or direct your credit card to their premium services. For Indeed or ZipRecruiter, the absolute last thing there's any economic incentive to do is help anyone actually find a job. No one hangs out on these platforms because they want to. Their power users are people desperate enough for work to keep inflating the engagement in spite of how objectively terrible these services prove themselves to be for the user. And there is so much money to be made in making these services terrible. LinkedIn in particular would like to present as a social-first platform that its users spend time on because they want to, not just because it has gradually become some weird cultural obligation. Come on guys, it's like Facebook, but professional. The dumbest person from your hometown is going to post motivational quotes instead of baby photos and motivational quotes. See, it's like Facebook. How fun. Please hang out here. But for these job boards, the social features are generally bare bones to non-existent. Your messages are all from online graduate programs. Your network is a loose collection of work acquaintances from over the years. Every post and page is dripping with a sanitized, work-appropriate fakeness.
Hey, everybody!
What are you supposed to do here, really? The only reason to stay active is because you're looking for or curious about finding a better job, whether you want to admit that to your employer or even yourself. While social media is a fair point of reference, especially with the inherent performatively self-promotional nature, it's still a stretch. For these job boards, the much more apt comparison to make is to a dating app. You're looking for the person or vocation you'll be indefinitely spending the majority of your time dedicated to. It's high stakes, but also depersonalized. Platforms as digital matchmakers allow near unlimited access to the overwhelming number of options available, which seems great, but is also kind of the main reason they don't work very well. One of the most common criticisms of dating, particularly the online dating scene, is that first dates feel too much like a job interview, and sometimes are just as hard to land. It's not always fun or romantic to feel like you're presenting a stranger, even a potential partner, with what amounts to your social resume. Without any established foundation, social rapport, or just real-life spontaneity, we can instead drift toward a series of often superficial checkboxes in an effort to not waste our own time.
Finance, trust fund, 6'5", blue eyes.
At their core, what dating apps offer us is a centralized platform for data points. Neighborhood, politics, height, fluency in sarcasm, please kill me. The how and why we use these apps is basically solely for the ability to filter. It's about efficiency. While filtering out deal breakers or major incompatibilities does improve efficiency, once inevitably taken to the extreme, it also comes at the expense of personalization. Finding any luck on dating apps for the average person often becomes about using a numbers game approach where you're casting the widest net possible, often exaggerating compatibility in order to simply take what you can get and go from there. The spray and pray strategy will yield more matches, but they're less likely to be a good fit, and you can't really get excited about or invested in meeting anyone in particular because it's just not worth your time statistically to do that. Only so many likes will convert to matches, matches to conversations, or conversations to dates. Same with applications, phone screenings, interviews, and callbacks. Much like how the most lucrative dating app customers are somewhat counterintuitively older men who've been using the free version or features for a length of time without much luck, power users for the big job boards are people already intimately familiar with just how ineffective they are. In Inevitable, Kevin Kelly names filtering one of the 12 technological forces that will shape our future, and the problems created by a concept sometimes referred to as overfitting. But only a little, this book is way too optimistic. Anyway, whenever we, often incorrectly, assume we already know exactly what we're looking for, we tend to dismiss great options in front of us due to the pursuit of perfection, illusion of infinite choice, and the analysis paralysis that come along with that. Harvard math graduate and co-founder of early online dating platform OkCupid, Christian Rudder, explores the reduction of digital identities to quantifying data points in his 2014 book Dataclysm. He also uses real internal company data to largely discredit the efficacy of a filter-focused approach. People tend to run wild with those match questions, marking all kinds of stuff as mandatory, in essence putting a checklist to the world. I'm looking for a dog-loving, agnostic, non-smoking liberal who's never had kids, and who's good in bed, of course. But very humble questions like, do you like scary movies, and have you ever traveled alone to another country, have amazing predictive power. People tend to overemphasize the big splashy things, faith, politics, and certainly looks, but they don't matter nearly as much as everyone thinks. Sometimes they don't matter at all. The idyllic perfectionism in many cases can't stay out of its own way and becomes counterproductive, which brings us back to the job search. Just as the major job boards allow applicants to filter listings for their city and industry, jobs are also filtering us. The way these companies and recruiters centralize the filtering process is by using what's called an applicant tracking system, or ATS. The ATS itself will most typically, and at best, sort applications in chronological order, allowing for review and note-taking, potentially apply a numeric score, or at worst, just fully use automation to reject resumes before they're even seen by a real human.
About 80% of resumes are rejected in just 11 seconds, and you want to make sure yours isn't passed over.
In either case, the first step of applying to a job is not so much selling yourself as you would to a hiring manager as it is appeasing an ATS. Whether it's being one of the first few dozen or so applicants to a job, a feat often only possible during a window of mere minutes, or optimizing a resume with keywords, the trick to getting your foot in the door means trying to avoid getting, for all intents and purposes, disqualified within the ATS. Assuming you're successful in doing so, your next hurdle toward employment is more or less a communication barrier. Statistically, you're probably not a recruiter or HR rep. So, and no shade to the people who do that for a living or anything, but they definitionally do not work in your field. They don't speak your language or have anything deeper than a rudimentary understanding of what exactly the actual hiring manager is even looking for. If it doesn't match specific keywords, a generalist recruiter isn't going to understand much context as it pertains to experience. Again, that's not their fault, it's just true. Here's a non-work example just to keep it simple. I've driven stick shift my entire life. It's just something that kind of happened to me. My first car was this old hand-me-down 86 two-seater, and to this day I've still never owned an automatic transmission car. I've also only ever owned 5 speeds, but one of my friends has a 6-speed. Now, stay with me when I say that he would trust me to drive his car in a way that he wouldn't for someone who has only had a few lessons on learning stick shift with a 6-speed. And that's because he drives stick. So he understands that the skill directly translates, there's really no learning curve involved. But to a recruiter who, according to this analogy, has never driven stick in their life, the novice might seem more qualified on paper if they were specifically instructed that a job requires driving a 6-speed. This isn't to blame the hypothetical recruiter. No one on earth has baseline technical knowledge, let alone years of hands-on experience in every niche field. It's just worth pointing out the inherent communication barrier that exists. This is the problem with filtering. It's a subtractive process. It doesn't actually attempt to find the good, it just removes the bad and keeps whatever's left over. Because it can only punish perceived negative attributes instead of recognizing positive ones, resumes that would perfectly qualify a candidate to the actual hiring manager aren't even being seen if they get mistakenly disqualified. If a graphic designer's resume notes advanced skills with the industry standard Adobe Creative Suite, Photoshop, Illustrator, all that good stuff, evil company by the way, they might still be disqualified for not also listing the popular entry-level freemium application Canva, even though no one doing professional design would ever need to use Canva because it's such significantly less powerful and sophisticated software. None of this is anything groundbreaking. It's pretty well understood by job seekers right now, but that obviousness alone speaks to the lack of real solutions. Forums like the subreddit Job Search Hacks are overflowing with advice about how you should be tailoring your resume to each individual job description when applying in order to hit as many keywords as possible, even if it means stretching the truth. Paste sections of the job description in your professional summary or work experience. Tweak your old job titles to better match the new role. Get ChatGPT to rewrite the entire thing. All of this to avoid getting filtered out from the applicants who do, on paper, meet every possible checkbox. It highlights how when you're dealing with an algorithm or hiring practices that might as well be one, the inevitable outcome is a loss of authenticity. When success requires scoring highly on measurables that don't necessarily reflect real-world quality, quality stops mattering. When you can game the system, the most effective strategy is gaming the system. You might not even be job searching right now, but everyone knows Google is a lot worse than it used to be. And that's due to more than just pay-to-win style promoted results, but also an entire industry of search engine optimization, reverse engineering the algorithm, and artificially boosting variables for websites that wouldn't otherwise show up as a top result. You search for something new to cook tonight and you get blasted with ads until you find a recipe, but then have to scroll down through 5 paragraphs about this pot roast being her grandmother's signature dish, or how this sangria is perfect for September tailgates and all that stuff. Nobody wants to read recipes like that. No one even wants to write them, but marketing professionals have tricked Google into thinking that exact copy length and keyword use percentage are the best result, so it's the only thing anyone is ever going to write or read. And Google has no incentive to do anything about this. It's in their financial best interest to actively make their product worse. The quicker you find what you're actually looking for, the less time you spend sifting through their affiliate links and ads, so they won't be able to sell as much engagement to advertisers and won't be able to make as much profit. And they're basically a monopoly, so what are you going to do about it? Use Bing? Gonna Bing something? Gonna Bing it real quick, like you're Andrew Garfield in The Amazing Spider-Man? This is the part where I'm going to talk about the sketchy alternative job sites, so I hope you enjoyed that horrible segue. That movie came out like 8 Spider-Man movies ago. Look how old the internet looks. Ugh. So there are the reputable sites, and then there are the other ones. You can't help but wonder if they're worth a shot the longer you're not having any luck anywhere else. So you might try, not to single any one of them out or anything, but Jobcase is pretty fucking awful. You'll see a listing from some website you've never even heard of before, but whatever. You'll give them your email, create an account, because that's like 80% of being an adult anyway. Then upload your resume and build a profile. They get you to spend as much time as possible so that you're invested, even though you're just planning on using the free version for that one job from 3 browser tabs over that you barely even remember what it was. And then you realize you have to pay for the premium version to use special features. Features like being allowed to apply for literally any job on the entire site. Guys, the future is awesome, and I love living in it. Even some of the legacy brands have no choice but to join this kind of race to the bottom. The sketchy job boards are in some ways about what you'd expect, just a similar service with less quality control, and that seems pretty innocent for a recruiting website, but God help you if your resume gets posted to Career Builder. Barely literate overseas recruiters will spam you 8 times a day with low-paying 6-month contract gigs in bumfuck New Jersey for the rest of your life. Been doing research for this video for a while. My favorite is this little micro social engineering scheme where they text you very obviously pretending like it's a follow-up from a job you already applied to, when in reality they're just spamming any lead they can get their hands on for an insurance sales job. Again, they're preying on desperation. No one can find a job in part because companies have delusional expectations right now, and they have them because they can afford to. So there's this concept called typecasting that's a big thing in the acting world. A working SAG member might only ever be able to land hyper-specific roles, looking to replicate their most well-known or often just first major performance. In the corporate world, something similar happens, where there are vanishingly few job listings looking to hire anyone without years of experience, having already done functionally the exact same job at a different company. It makes sense as jobs in an economy constantly growing in complexity become more and more specialized. Companies don't just want a new marketing graduate or someone with generalist experience. They want someone with experience leading short-term paid digital campaigns in the CPG space while utilizing Asana. Overfitting demands a kind of stagnation. The risk aversion means just repeating the same old. No company wants to train you on anything because it will cost them money. They don't want to take a chance on you using obviously transferable skills if it's not exactly what you've already proven capable of somewhere else. This is overfitting. Actors who tend to get typecast are the ones whose on-screen personas appear nearly indistinguishable from their real-life self. They're the best at authentically capturing their specific archetype, because to any degree they are acting, it's just as a slightly narrativized version of themselves. Job seekers, on the other hand, are filtered, typecast by experience, and early career work history doesn't necessarily reflect their educational background, soft skills, or interest. It's not comparably representative of their real self in that way, because people don't tend to land their dream job right after graduation. They just take the first internship or lowball offer they can find just to get some experience. Even applying to a new job implies some level of dissatisfaction with your current one, but excessive automated filtering makes pivoting feel impossible for applicants and risky or inefficient for companies. All of which does very little to serve either party in the actual work relationship, and everything to make sure no resources ever get used for on-the-job training. This is, of course, reflective of the wider power imbalance between applicants and employers. There's the obvious reality that companies are only hoping to expand or backfill another cog in the machine, but we all need jobs for food and not living under a bridge. They can demand a flawless resume, overqualified experience, multiple rounds of interviews for even part-time, temporary, or lowball offers, and there's an understanding that you'll present yourself in the best possible light anyway. But don't expect them to return the favor. These are so low effort that they are regularly filled with typos, and plenty of them are so obviously written by ChatGPT that they don't even remove the part at the bottom asking them if they want a revised or more concise version. The way I see it, there are 3 types of job descriptions. The overwhelming majority are the first type, a totally incomprehensible buzzword salad of vacuous corporate doublespeak. This role will work to provide timely and value-added deliverables in relentless dedication to synergizing our mission, vision, and values means that our product innovative and cutting-edge workflow, our target a data-driven approach, while enriching the commitment to our investors, customers, and employees. You're 3 paragraphs deep, like, Christ, just say something, please, before you finally realize the company is like selling running shoes. The second type are the job descriptions that are actually good. They more or less say what you'll actually be doing, who you'll be working with, and how it fits into the business. There are not many of these. The third type is, in a way, also doing the thing where they're going out of their way to say nothing, but it's with the most aggressive, try-hard energy to tap into some quirky relatability. These are obnoxious and condescending, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't kind of enjoy them. This one's completely real, by the way. You wield the cosmic brush of a visual virtuoso. It's a dynamic symphony of visual elements. Within the galactic deadlines, you're a cosmic time bender. Your work resonates through the multiverse of media, intertwining seamlessly with the journeys of those who explore its vast landscapes. What the fuck? Companies will just write a whole-ass Dungeons & Dragons campaign in the job description before they'll just say how much it pays. Seriously, though, they really do not like giving out that information. Only 14 U.S. states have implemented wage transparency laws for job listings, and if you don't live in one of them, then you get to do what the rest of us do. Play The Price is Right on legendary difficulty.
She was over by $4.
Most HR web applications use a mandatory numeric field for salary expectations, so if you ask, or just guess is probably the better word, for even slightly more pay than what was budgeted for the role, your resume is going straight into the trash. I'd ask rhetorically, why not just save each other the time, but companies obviously love this. If you give them in writing the bare minimum amount you'd take, that's all they're going to pay you. Plenty of jobs aren't even real. There's a serious problem with ghost jobs that were either always meant to be an internal hire, filled by a referral, and then never taken down from the job boards, or never even legitimate in the first place and just intended to imply company growth to investors. Forbes recently reported that a survey of more than 700 recruiters conducted by My Perfect Resume found that 81% admitted to having posted ghost jobs online, and approximated that 36% of all job listings don't actually represent a real vacancy. There's very little regulation about this kind of thing, and the data is out there showing that there are significantly more job seekers than job openings right now. But the US government is actively suppressing and downplaying the severity of a serious economic trend, even going as far as firing the commissioner for the Bureau of Labor Statistics. There's a sort of omnipresent insistence that everything is totally fine and you're crazy for doubting the system, even though it doesn't reflect your lived experience, which for all but a lucky few, it won't. Because if the upfront presentation from companies is bad, it's got nothing on the follow-up. Most applications are just sent into the void, never to be responded to or followed up with in any way.
Are you here with us?
The ones who do respond are with a boilerplate rejection notice that offers no feedback or indication that you were even given serious consideration by the actual hiring manager. Applying to hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs that never follow up in a meaningful way feels like a conversation with no one. It's an almost prayer-like monologue where you're asking for help from a vague someone who can't respond and gives no indication that they're even listening. It feels like a waste of your time. It feels that way because for all intents and purposes, it is a waste of your time. The monotony of online job applications is a repetitive and tedious process with essentially nothing material to practice or learn from. You either get the job or you don't. What you're not getting is any type of real-time or thoughtful feedback, not even in a lot of interviews. This past year has seen a massive rise in one-way video interviews. When you're desperate, they don't even sound that bad on paper. It's almost like a cool new work-from-home version of a conventional interview. Added convenience, lower stakes. Sometimes you even get one redo per question. But as you'll know, if you've ever submitted any of these recordings into the emptiness of the internet, there's something so dehumanizing about being expected to have a conversation with no one, to bring your best sales pitch of your own self to a meeting that no one from the company can even be bothered to attend. And so you finish your answer just staring blankly at your reflection on screen, alone in your own apartment. And you just can't help but feel like Nathan Fielder is supposed to pop out and give some notes and encouragement for the real version of the interview. But he never does, and that interview never even happens. You're not on a show. This is just what job searching is like now. Again, with the parallels to acting, self-recorded audition tapes are standard procedure, often submitted without a scene partner. But I don't think this recurring analogy is a coincidence. I think it's built on an obvious commonality: performance. In acting, pretending to be something you're not is the job. But when applying for work, performance is only the price of admission for getting the job. No one is going to miraculously tick every seemingly mandatory box, but we still feel compelled toward the same inauthentic first date style performance of normalcy, of perfection, of 1 in a million odds compatibility that only sheer desperation can demand of us. Naive excitement is the expectation, and desperate job seekers are being conditioned at every step to present as the ideal in every way candidate to an ATS or recruiter with no reasonable mechanism for evaluating truth. Look, I'm really not trying to paint dating, even online dating, as some impossible nightmare. Put your most authentic self out there and just treat people with respect. It really goes a long way. I'm just pointing out the monetary incentives for these platforms not having your best interest in their business model. Still, rejection hurts. It's painful, and when experienced at near constant frequency, it's demoralizing. Whether it's casting the widest possible net out of desperation or hyperfixating on one specific opportunity to the point of borderline dishonesty, the resulting mindset is functionally the same, and it's not a healthy one. There are stakes in how we as people represent or conceptualize ourselves, even internally, and when it comes to the question of who are you, there can be no more dehumanizing answer than whoever you want me to be. I'm not exactly a hustle culture grind set type of guy, but There's value in work, not in the sense of driving shareholder value. That's a very inhuman thing to care about. But we should have skills. We should contribute something to the community, make things we're proud of. What you do for a living is almost always the question you're met with during an introduction to any other adult. It's what we spend most of our time doing. It's how far too much of society quantifies our social worth. But that's only one component of living a life with some dignity. Living that life of dignity is gate-kept behind having money, which means convincing a company by what feels like any means necessary that you're the person to give some to. And when that very personhood becomes so malleable that you can't even recognize it in yourself, that's dehumanization. If you have 600 different versions of your resume tailored to specific jobs just floating loose in the cloud somewhere, which one is your real one? It's like trying to picture from memory what J.D. Vance looks like in real life. I can't do that. More to the point, do you have a real resume? Does that label even mean anything? Those types of questions make job seekers feel like they aren't a specific someone, just a so far unrealized potential something, anything. And that gives these corporations even more power over us. The production over the personal has always been what they really care about, and that's why they're like this. Why they're all being subsumed by the inhuman, the artificial. I don't want to talk about generative AI, but I have to. Jobs don't exist in a vacuum, they make up an economy, and this is just what our economy is now. The upper echelon of global capital is currently based almost exclusively on speculative investment around AI. Talking about it, trying to convince each other that it's the future, and that there are trillions of dollars to be made with it. It's turned into some imaginary arms race that even the most diehard evangelists can't seem to grasp how to win, but have hyped up as the one thing no person, company, or nation can afford to lose. So businesses have sunk hundreds of billions of dollars into large language models, haphazardly cramming chatbots and AI features into every piece of tech they have, hastily rebranding themselves as innovative pioneers in AI first, and however they actually make money within the real economy second. LinkedIn loves AI. They want content and only care about engagement, no matter how inhuman it is. They love that there's some hot new thing everyone's talking about. They love the endless think pieces and uncertainty from people looking to their site for updates and guidance on how to not get left behind in a changing world. They love all of the speculative hype around how AI is going to revolutionize absolutely everything about the world. Eventually, any day now. They want a narrative for more content to be consumed than last quarter. You should even post something. Don't know what to say? Try writing with AI. On the off chance someone would actually read that, great. If not, who cares? It's not like LinkedIn paid anyone to make it, and every website is doing the exact same thing. The inevitable repercussions of this could not be more glaring. An internet where anybody can effortlessly generate anything at any time is a dead internet. Not because there are no real people logged in or any real information for them to consume, but because they are lost in and outnumbered by all of the slop and bots and garbage. Dead internet was never a binary. It was always going to be a one-way downhill slide toward the wrong end of a spectrum, where most everything to be found here is fake and bait and cynically monetized in the least user-friendly way. It's awesome that Plankton from SpongeBob can sing karaoke now. Great memes, no notes. But generative AI is not solving trillion-dollar problems for real people. It's a flimsy excuse for companies to justify layoffs and demand more productivity. It is polluting the primary infrastructure for all professional and interpersonal communication to the point of being basically unusable.
Look at these ads. They're made with 100% AI, and they're absolutely printing.
No one is actually jazzed up about this shit unless they think they can use it to make a ton of money without actually contributing anything to society. It's just crypto. It's just gambling. I'm not even making an individualistic moral argument. Use it to streamline some tedious low-skill tasks at work. That's fine. Your employer probably wants you to anyway. But all of these psychos bragging about how they let AI do practically their entire job for them aren't embracing the future. They're just making everyone wonder what the hell they're even getting paid for. But companies want you to be AI savvy. It's the future after all. It's totally going to revolutionize everything. Any day now. Trust us. And I see nothing but cope in trying to pretend that being good at using AI is a skill, Like, sure, there's going to be some trial and error in writing prompts that might take a little bit of time to build up a knack for. That's just how communication works. But shut the fuck up if you think that using the thing that does the actual thing for you is a skill worth taking pride in. You outsourced the work, just be honest. But instead of paying another person, you used the plagiarism robot. Cool. Want to find a job? This is the game you're playing, or at least the one we're all plummeting toward. If a recruiter makes a job description with AI, hundreds of applicants use AI to tailor their resume to the job description so that they score highly on their AI evaluation. What is even the point of this whole charade? What are we doing? What is the plan here? In 2005, Russian anthropologist Alexei Yershak coined the term hypernormalization in reference to a shift in public perception during what would later be recognized as the collapse of the Soviet Union. It spoke to the intersection of a growing obviousness regarding the failure of a largely rigged system with the total powerlessness of the individual to meaningfully challenge the declining status quo, to the normalization of apathy and hopelessness. A decade later, a documentary by the same name created by British filmmaker Adam Curtis repopularized the term within the context of then current events and the apparent socio-political detachment from conventional reality permeating through culture. Hypernormalization has made another minor resurgence just this year for obvious reasons. I'm not being dramatic. The timeline is being dramatic. This whole undercurrent, this collective understanding that everything is getting worse and dumber and more expensive and more exhausting for seemingly no reason is happening basically everywhere, but it could not be more apparent than it is in the state of the job market on the dead internet. It's not normal for people with master's degrees to get rejected from retail jobs and take gig work, or for half your friends to not even have health insurance or get full-time hours. It's not normal for every hiring interaction to be hyper-mediated through layers of tech tools optimized by algorithms so that no one has to interact with or acknowledge each other's humanity. Like we're living through the most boring and predictable episode of Black Mirror where everyone is reduced to a quantifiable economic scorecard. At least it shouldn't be normal. The economy's bad and the job market is worse, and it's getting hard to even imagine that not being the case when it's been the closest thing we have to one stable factor in an endless stream of supposedly once-in-a-lifetime crises that have defined our entire adulthood. But we don't have to imagine it. We can just remember it. We can know that it didn't used to be like this, and it doesn't have to stay this bad. We can point to a better system, not out of toxic nostalgia or a mythologized whitewashing of a more socially regressive past, but to show what we know is possible when we don't forfeit the infrastructure of civilization over these soulless tech platforms that generate so much garbage that you have to assume everything on there is false or faked or staged or a scam until proven otherwise. Fighting hypernormalization means fighting this inescapable defeatism, the hopeless resignation so many of us are feeling just by paying attention, the whole tragic absurdity of it all that I sometimes think of as grocery shopping during the apocalypse. Things can get better if enough of us demand them to, and hopefully they will. In the meantime, I know I said I wouldn't get dramatic, but try to take care of your humanity, because if that word means the complete opposite of whatever this is, your humanity is worth holding on to. Thanks for watching.